Hey everyone, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Marty.
I'm Charlie.
And we do this podcast every week. We're trying to do it every week. Lately, we haven't been going as good about that. Dedicated to both aquaponics and gardening. Ooh, you have a loop.
I
Sorry
heard
about
that.
Sorry about that. Forgot to mute that. We try to do this every week in order to help people with both aquaponic gardening as well as cannabis production, even if you're not doing aquaponics. Today we are blessed to have Charlie Shultz, one of the leading experts and one of the people that has been doing aquaponics longer than just about anyone else in terms of the commercial field or the research field. I believe he was with UVI, and I believe you got close to 30 years, maybe even more than that now.
Probably just over 20 in the industry.
Yeah, okay. So just over 20 in the industry with aquaponics, and we haven't really ever had a guest that had that kind of experience before, so we're really thankful to have him on the show today. We also have a tribute today to Dennis Peron. For those of you that don't know, he's not doing super well right now. We're gonna have did a whole write out on him today. I did a bunch of research on some of the things he's done. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's the grandfather of the cannabis industry and the medical cannabis industry. Without him, none of us would be doing what we're doing right now. This podcast wouldn't exist. Marty and I wouldn't know each other. None of you guys would. Probably most of you wouldn't be smoking weed, at least to the comfortability that you guys are now, and not having to worry about the police or other things in at least a large majority of the country now. What I believe we're up to 27 states that have some form of medical or recreational. So, and if you count CBD, there's only 8 left that don't. So without him, none of that would have happened.
Yeah, I think there's only a handful of people that really sort of, that anybody who enjoys medical owe a debt to, and he would definitely have to be one of them. So, salute him. Also, Eddie Lepp. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but got released from prison after I think five plus years recently. So, salute to him. I know he's getting some stuff done, and check it out. I know he's got I think it's called Eddie Lepp's plant candy. He's already got a place set up to grow and start doing some testing. So good on him. And so those are probably 2 guys for sure that I think if you enjoy either recreational or medical, you really owe them a debt. And if nothing else, at least a salute for sure.
Absolutely. I did a real long piece. I wrote out a real long piece on him today. It took me a while to write out, and just I didn't know all the ridiculous things that he's done and all the bills he's passed and all the shit that this guy's been through. Amazing. And to hear like how he completely destroyed both a cop and the Attorney General of California on the spot just by like riling them up over their xenophobia against gay people, which allowed him and the movement to further move on. And for that particular part of California to, they were big allies to the cannabis community and the gay rights community, and he really made a huge impact on both of them. We're really blessed to have him around. And I was blessed enough to meet the guy and spend time with him and talk to him and learn from him, and have a bunch of really good laughs with him. So to hear that his health is declining, and he was hospitalized. He's home from the hospital now, but he's still not doing particularly well. But it was just nice to see all the tributes to him and all this other things. And I'll read what I wrote about him real quick. Let me pull it up here. So Dennis Peron is a longtime cannabis and LGBT activist who is the reason we have this podcast at all. His work and his passage of Cali 215 allowed the cannabis industry to become what it is today. He fought along with Harvey Milk and many others for gay rights during the 60s and 70s. He was born in Long Island, New York, and joined the Air Force in Vietnam. Dennis fought when the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And as a result of that experience, that's when he decided, after seeing so much death, that he wanted to dedicate his life to bringing peace to the world. After that, he once he got out of Vietnam, he moved to the Castro district of San Francisco. He brought about 2 pounds of cannabis with him back from Vietnam, and he used that, the seed stock from that, to start a grow op in California in secret. He found his passion in life in cannabis and the healing powers shortly after that. In 1978, the police raided a restaurant that he was selling cannabis out of called the Big Top, which acted basically as like a front for a cannabis dispensary. He was shot in the leg and was busted for possession of a whole crap ton of pounds, like 40, 50 pounds or more. He was looking at a really long jail sentence. But he was given an extremely light sentence after some pretty crazy shit happened. So when Dennis was going into the courtroom, Dennis, who is gay, for those of you who don't know, complimented his arresting officer, the guy who shot him in the leg, on how nice his shoes were. The cop snapped in front of the whole courtroom, yelling, "I'd like to kill you, you effing F gay person slur. I'm not even going to bother saying it on the show. Ass, and get rid of one more of you in San Francisco." Right in front of the jury, the judge, the prosecutor, and everyone. They threw out almost all the charges and gave him a couple of minor charges. He ended up serving 7 months for and getting out of jail and not serving any drug charges. His arrest led to the passage of Proposition W in San Francisco that ordered the San Francisco District Attorney to stop arresting people for growing and transporting and distributing cannabis. In 1990, Dennis lost his longtime partner to AIDS, and that's when he decided he was going to open up an AIDS dispensary, similar to, there was a place called the Healing Power, which was a Catholic mission that was dedicated to helping provide people with low-cost AIDS drugs or free AIDS drugs, and he modeled it basically after that. And he saw how much AIDS was ravaging his community. Well, in 1991, he opened, or helped pass, along with Brownie Mary, helped pass Measure P, which moved cannabis enforcement to the lowest priority for law enforcement in San Francisco. In 1992, he opened the first dispensary called the San Francisco Buyers Club, which basically almost over 50% of their patients ended up being HIV positive, and basically that was the bulk of their patients were HIV and cancer patients and other people that had serious medical problems. And they used a lot of the research and the firsthand accounts from the people from there were the basis for many of these medical research things about AIDS and cancer and all these other debilitating diseases were directly result of his research. And his personal experiences from the San Francisco Cannabis Buyers Club. Doctors were going there to meet patients in order to, have connections with people and meet people that were having these issues that were benefiting from cannabis. And that's how we got to any amount of cannabis research, was thanks to him and the work he did. In 1996, he helped draft and pass California 215, the first medical bill in the United States. Also in 1996, he ran for, I didn't know this until I was doing some research on him, ran for the presidential candidate for the Grassroots Party. So he actually ran for president, which was kind of funny, which I didn't know. In 1998, he ran for the Republican primary as the Republican candidate of governor of California. During the campaign, one of his opponents was a former cop that helped try to arrest him before in San Francisco. It was the current California Attorney General. Dennis told him these macho cops just can't stand the idea of a skinning little F gay slur, won't fold up and go away because they're told to do so. The Attorney General during the debate completely lost it, having a total meltdown and career-ending rant that cost him both his job and his political future as Attorney General or elsewhere else. After that, he adamantly opposed Prop 19, and how I met him was opposing Prop 64 to legalize when he realized the danger these bills would have. And now that you have so many county and city bans, it's been obvious as to why he's opposed to them. It's caused nothing but chaos and taken away people's rights. Right? It didn't grant any, hardly. Dennis also spent a large portion of his life helping AIDS patients and other people with severe illnesses. the medical case they needed. He was one of the biggest proponents and openly selling it. It's one of the things that he did differently than everyone else. He was open about it. He was arrested over 24 times. And without him, we really, I really can't express to him much how much. I really can't express how much we would not be where we are today without him. Let's see. He's battling cancer and it's spreading, and that's what his issue is right now. Hopefully, this new treatment they're going to try for him, or I don't know. I read something online that he might be trying something else. We'll see how it works, but hopefully he'll come around. His mom is quoted as once saying, "We get calls all the time saying, 'We saw your son selling marijuana to AIDS patients on TV.' She told the reporter, 'Good, they need it.'" If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have this podcast. My life would be very different. The life of my father, the life of my sister, and the life of my cousin would all be dramatically different if it weren't for him. I've had the blessing of spending a few days with him in San Diego, and days were spent with a tremendous amount of belly-aching laughs, as well as knowledge imparted on me. It was an honor to meet one of the true OGs of cannabis. If you want to let him know how much he means to you, please visit his Facebook and leave him a message. So it took me a while to write that out, but I wanted to make sure I got a bunch of good points about things that he had done, things he's done for us, and just as a kind of a tribute to him.
Cool. Good job, man.
Thanks. Sorry, I don't normally read a scripted thing that I've pre-written beforehand, but
I smoked to that.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Charlie? I know you had a few words you wanted to say on Dennis. You still there? I think he stepped out for a minute. Oh, maybe not. You there, Charlie? All right, well, we're waiting for Charlie to get back. Marty, how has your week been going, and what's new with you and your business venture and everything else going up in there in Oregon?
Things are steadily moving along, and we're still pretty much on that same schedule to be starting out here in probably, let's see, what is it, February. So still looking at about another 3 to 4 weeks before we can even get access to the property. And we have to start, we're going to do a few modifications to the shop, and it needs a bigger HVAC system, and we need to close off half of it. Half of it is big open door shop, so where they just rolled equipment into. So definitely you got to get that done, and then just like packing shit up around here and preparing to move. Just normal everyday non-gardening boring shit. But yeah, I have part of the garage sectioned off to sort of keep some mothers and some clones and a few little projects. And yeah, I built a homemade earth box, or sip, whatever you want to call it. So I got one of my mothers in there, and I just feed it tank water from the aquaponic system, and works great. So basically, I just I adjust the tank water, so I'm adding my worm tea mixture that I would normally dose with into the system, and then about an hour later I come and pull water out and put it into the sip, and then that's all I'm feeding. It's not flowering yet, so it's not like it's a real heavy feed, but it also has a whole much larger layer of soil. It's basically like a very large dual root zone. It's got a lot more soil, and you don't have to worry about any fish or anything like that. So it's very simple to do. And feeding it water from the aquaponic system just sort of gives it that, continued culture of microbes. So I definitely think it's kind of it's kind of a very simple way of doing it. So I have that going on. It's kind of my only little project, other than just growing some vegetables. I got some beets and greens and stuff, which is always nice to have in the wintertime, to have fresh greens, and I have to buy the crap they sell at the store. So So hopefully within a few weeks I'll have some Platinum Girl Scout cookie that I'll be flowering out. I popped about 15 seeds and picked the best ones and cloned them, and those clones are ready to flower out. So we'll get to see the fruits of the pheno hunt here very soon. So that'll be fun. I'll have some videos coming up on that. And we'll have to see what happens. I may end up having to like load all that stuff in a trailer and drive it up there. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. I'll probably still, have this house here long enough to be able to finish that run out, because I'll be back and forth for a while. But it's a solid 4-hour drive straight through. So it's not like it's not a tiny commute by any means. So we'll see how that goes. But garden-wise, everything else is going pretty good. I've even fired up the outdoor systems now that it's cold, but it's not freezing. So I've planted some hardy greens out there that do pretty good in the wintertime. And so I sprout them inside and move them outside. And so hopefully, as long as you don't have any big freezes, any extended freezes, I should say, because just a few of them, like here and there for a night really isn't that big of a deal. I had greens in the aquaponic system even when it was shut down that survived like 6 inches of snow for probably 5 days. They were just straight buried, melted off. Even the fish that were in the tank, there was I think 2 50-cent goldfish that had frozen over by the time I got back, and they were inside the tank. I was like, oh well, I'm not gonna go chip them out of the ice. We'll see what happens. And so sure enough, everything defrosted and they're swimming around doing just fine. So definitely have found it to be a lot more hardy than both the plants and the fish, if you choose, can be very hardy. So that's about all I have going on right now, which I guess in retrospect is more than I originally thought. But so yeah, how about you, Steve? You got anything growing?
Yeah, we got a big soil garden growing. We're getting going in the meantime while we're getting all the things together to start putting in the greenhouse. A bunch of the materials together to get some of the smaller one up. We'll probably begin construction of that here in the next. And then I've been working on a big project with a LA-based company that looks like it's coming together. We just got a bunch more funding and a bunch more investors on the project, so I think it's going to accelerate pretty quickly that I can't mention much more about. I have another project that I can't really talk about much that is a new cannabis product that works extremely quickly. Imagine if you could have an edible that worked within 1 to 5 minutes rather than 45 minutes to an hour. Rapidly accelerates how quickly your uptake is without saying anything else than that. On a project with those people, on a pretty cool project. I think, what else can I talk about right now that I'm working on? Just getting more gardens and more food production going on up here at Eden. Working on more events up here at Eden. Been manning a bunch of different parties and events up here. We had the New Year, Chinese New Year. We had a bunch of other things and events. We were doing both education. Have a medicinal herb class I'll be teaching up at Ouroboros on the.
Oh yeah, I saw that link.
Yeah, I'll be teaching that up at the end of the month. I believe it's February 25th and 26th. You guys can check out more information on that on the Ouroboros website, ouroborosfarms.com. They're in Half Moon Bay, just outside of San Francisco. But if that's something you're looking to do on a commercial or even small scale, and learn about different things you can make from them or the profitability of different medicinal herbs, it's definitely something you want to check out. There's a lot of research and nutrient data that was, both started off from the cannabis research that is now extrapolated over to some other things, with some further testing and growth. So, we have lots of different herbs that we're growing up at Ouroboros to show you guys and things like that. So definitely give it a check out. And
Cool.
what else? At the end of March, we have another cannabis class as well, if anyone is interested. Again at Ouroboros, March 25th and 26th.
Hey, Steve. Joe in the chat has a question there.
Sure. It says, what do you keep the pH at to keep the plants and fish happy? I try to aim between 6.4 and 6.8 pH. I don't know if you differ from that much, but that's pretty much where you, at least for to fish happy and with the systems that we're doing, with the microbe level, it seems to be the sweet spot.
Yeah, close to neutral. You know, I think obviously some plants do better in different pH levels. So, you know, it kind of depends a little bit on what you're growing and what fish you have. Like, you know, koi, for instance, are extremely hardy, and, you know, they, for the most part, don't care a whole lot, and at least outside the range that plants would. So, you know, I would say, you know, I think we've said that on here a lot, 6.5 or 6.4 on the low end, you know, and then, you know, 6.8 is sort of like, you know, what we consider the sweet spot, I suppose, anywhere in that like 6.5 to 6.8 range. And, you know, unless you're, I don't know, trying to fruit blueberries or something like that, I don't know that I would vary too much from that. So especially for cannabis, I would say, you know, anywhere in that range is fine. And if it's not like drastically, like if it's 6.4 or even 6.3 and I'm you know, expecting to add water, which I know is high in pH, then, you know, I try not to adjust it if I can, and find for the most part, as long as I keep up on topping the tank off, I don't add a lot of water at a time, I don't have to worry about adjusting it really too much at all. So, you know, if you try to top it off when you only need about 5% tank total, then I think you'll be fine. I find I don't need to adjust at all, even though my well water here is like 8.4 coming out of the tap. I can probably do up to like 20% of my total water. So, and be able to add that in without having to adjust it. The system will just balance itself out with its own buffer. So, so that's been my experience with it, is to get it set where you want it to, and then try to stay up on it. So if you find your pH is constantly dropping, then, you know, try to find a way to, you know, balance it out without having to adjust it drastically a lot. I think that's what fish are probably going to have more of an issue with. Steve, maybe you can attest to that, but that's kind of what I've read on it, is the pH swing from extreme to extreme is what fish tend to not tolerate very well.
Yeah, pH swing, just like temperature swing, compromises their immune system pretty quickly. So, you know, if you are going to dose, always do it slower than better. If it takes you 3 days to adjust the pH, or a week even, or 2 weeks to adjust the pH, that's better than doing it in one shot.
For sure. Even if you throw some plants into lockout for a little while, and, you know, even if it's so bad you have to replace them, you know, usually it's easier to fix plant issues than it is to fix pH issues.
You there, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm here. All right, bring me in. I didn't hear that last comment.
Oh, no worries. A gentleman asked, what pH do we like to keep for
Yeah.
the AP?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I was agreeing with everything you guys are saying, so we're all in line there. The system will balance itself, and there's different ways to manage pH, and sometimes there's situations where you don't even manage pH. You just top it off with that water, like Marty's saying. So I agree with everything you're saying.
Why don't you tell us about yourself and your experience, and you know, your
Yeah,
tell
sure.
us about your experience.
Let me pop in and see if I can get the camera here. There we go. You guys can see me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
All right, all good. Cool. Yeah, so I'm Charlie Shultz. A lot of aquaponic people know me from UVI, the Virgin Islands. I was blessed to spend about 13 years there working with Jim Ricosi, Donald Bailey, Jason Danaher, Eric Toman, Ezekiel Clark, Donna James, and Frankie, my man Frankie, for a long time. So a lot, as a lot of papers say, Ricosi and colleagues. So we all got together and spent a lot of time. There was people before me, even another guy named Shultz. So in some of the very ancient papers, you may find Kurt Shultz. And he was my predecessor who sat me down in a lab and taught me the chemistry and back in 1998. And so, yeah, that's my claim to fame is working with the colleagues at UVI. Currently, I'm at Santa Fe Community College where I teach greenhouse management, hydroponics, aquaponic systems, and manage a lot of interns. And I'm with a colleague of mine, Adam Cohen, who's been on your show before. And we're planning a lot of expansion at the college. And we have a lot of expertise there, and we have a lot of interest. So the program's growing, and I'm thrilled to be where I am today.
Awesome.
So, what kind of crops have you grown, and what kind of little quirky bits of knowledge have you learned that maybe aren't as widely known, or things that you don't think are quite covered well enough in the industry or in teaching in the industry?
Yeah, so I've grown about every crop you can imagine. Quite a few of us have grown many variety of plants, from medicinal crops to vegetables. So I've done rice. I've done, like I said, medicinals on a decently large scale, most of these crops. I find that plants are resilient, and I do encourage people, if you can create a nice balanced system, it'll work for you. And I don't think it's that difficult to do. So I do encourage people. I don't think it's rocket science. So I can find that I can teach this. For years, we've all focused on business. If you want to do this, you put your efforts into your marketing and your business planning. And we can grow very nutritious crops. And you can do it intensively or extensively and commercial or backyard system. So, you know, I wouldn't even say tricks. It's just getting a flow of your system and understanding the nutrients, the water quality, how the cycle flows. And once you get in that rhythm and you're consistent, then I think you have a good time, and you can do whatever you want to do with aquaponics.
Did you have any kind of like aha moment or anything like that in the beginning going into it, or when you how is it that you got exactly into aquaponics to begin with?
Yeah, so I teach my students, and I give talks often about why I got into it. And I guess it was somewhat of an aha moment when in the late 1980s, I changed my diet to fish and plants. So that's what I was eating on a regular. And in the late 80s, we saw photos in the news and in the press of medical waste that washed up on our seashores. So in the late 80s, our hospitals on the eastern seashore of America were dumping waste out into the deep ocean. So the out of sight, out of mind principle, or the dilution is the solution to pollution. But this medical waste was obviously persistent, and it washed up on our seashore. And I got this lightning bolt that this whole open system is contaminated, and we really can't. We can't say this is safe food. So I wanted then to grow fish indoors. I wanted to still eat fish, but I wanted to grow fish that was safe for people. And as you see now, we have hormones floating in the open environment. We have drugs, estrogens. We have a lot of chemicals in the open ocean, and situations like Fukushima, radiation. Where I lived was an oil refinery in St. Croix that polluted the environment. The rum plants polluted the environment. The cruise ships polluted the environment. So personally, to me, that's the controversy of wild fish versus farm fish is a no-brainer. because with farm fish, I have controlled conditions. And right now with wild fish, I would not trust what they're exposed to in many situations. And so I wanted to grow fish. I focused my career on growing fish and recycle systems. And I was one of the early pioneers, I guess, that realized that fish water is a great nutrient source for hydroponic production. And so that's how I got kind of that lightning bolt moment. And so I kind of honed in on controlled environment fish, and then I tagged it into hydroponic systems. I quickly found a job in the University of the Virgin Islands, and I got to spend 14 years almost in a beautiful paradise at times. And although all the glitters isn't gold, I know Steve and probably Marty, you both been through the Caribbean, and you know, it once you live the life, who feels it knows it. It's a tough place to live. So St. Croix had no water, no fresh water. There was no rivers, there was no creek, there was no pond, and if you dug a well, it was salty. So we were forced to recycle water. So we tied in rain catchments and water systems at home. We all had cisterns and gray water systems, and not only was water scarce, but energy was extremely high. 54 cents a kilowatt hour, which is 5 or 6 times what most people pay in the US. So energy was expensive, water was expensive, and land was limited. So these systems really apply for those situations. So it was a great experience. We focused on the Caribbean population. Our mandate basically was to help the local population adopt a fish producing system in a region that's used to fish, but all the reef fish are being overfished and contaminated. So let's grow inland. And because of water shortage, we had to develop a recycle system. Because a small island, we had to recycle nutrients. And it was a great model that has been adopted probably in, I would say at this point, maybe 25 to 30 countries have a very similar UVI style system. And then I would say thousands of people in maybe 100 countries have some kind of UVI variant. So it's really exciting to be part of that kind of movement early on.
That's awesome. What were you guys using for supplements when you were working there? What were the supplements that you had worked with or tried or tested? And did you guys do anything with the food supplementation or, you know, formulating food?
Right. So the entire time I was there, and almost the entire 30 history of UVI, I was about 13 years. I think Ricosi has been 30 years. They wanted to photobomb because you guys are the best. Yeah, there's quite a history, long time. Hey, if I can take one moment, this was for Dennis Peron tonight. So I believe in healing. And my friend Steve there talked quite a bit about Dennis Peron's accomplishments and what he is doing and still doing. So we do wish him prayers, as we do all humans, prayers for peace and healing and not suffering. So Dennis, this is off for you tonight. I hope you're watching, brother. And if not, I hope your friends are and will inspire you to heal. Bless. All right. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, so yeah, go ahead and ask me a question. I'm sorry if I forgot a question about UVI, but those were definitely some pioneering days.
Absolutely, absolutely. What did you guys do while working there as far as fish food supplementation to try to address nutrients in the system, or what supplements were you using as far as mineral salts or other additives?
Cool. This was an important part of the research. We did stick with commercial diets the entire time I was there. I do preach that commercial fish production, I'm going to use a commercial designed food for my fish species. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, everything, fats, protein levels, everything that my fish species, whether it's tilapia, trout, koi, you should feed them the proper diet, in my opinion. Especially in the food fish market, if you're looking for growth rates and immunity, even without any chemicals, where there's no antibiotics in fish feeds these days. So conventional diets. Really, we didn't look to alter that too much because a fish farmer in the Caribbean could get a pallet of Purina feed. So we used Purina tilapia chows. So the diets there were standard, but I do think that there's always been a future for designer diets in aquaponics. Why not? And there's been a couple people who have attempted that. Bell Aquaculture, last couple years, have had an aquaponic diet out. There's premium organic fish food who they're not necessarily targeted to aquaponics, but they're organic. So if there ever is a day to have organic fish, we'll need some source of organic fish food. So I do support them because they're charging that path. I don't know the future of organic fish. It's hard to predict, but I know we won't see anything in the US for years. So that's a whole nother topic we could talk about sometime. So there's another fish food company that just came out by a professor of mine. So I'll take the moment. You don't mind if I plug a company, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So Dr. Stephen Craig's been a fish nutritionist. He worked on that Bell project, Bell Aquaculture. You guys, if you want to Google aquaculture in Indiana, a large trout facility, salmon facility. They did perch, and they fooled around with aquaponics a little bit. But they built a $5 million feed plant, and they made a diet that was labeled aquaponic diet. So I'm sure you could Google Bell aquaculture feeds and aquaponic diet. So they've gone out of business. That Dr. Craig was a professor of mine, started a new company recently, optimalfishfood.com. Optimalfishfood.com is a diet that's been designed not just for fish, but for fish and plants. And it's been a quick way to say it is maybe over fortified with nutrients. So as the fish excrete, they excrete a little excess phosphorus, maybe nitrogen, iron is another element. And he's tried to feed them in certain chelated forms. So it may impact our water nutrient quality. So the price point is great. If you look at optimalfishfood.com, you'll see I ran the calculations at maybe 85 cents a pound. It comes to you shipping free, which is pretty amazing these days. So the price is in there. And the selling point on this diet is there's no GMO ingredients. So if that's a concern of yours as a grower, whatever you're growing as a crop, whatever you're growing as a fish, they're kind of diets that are blended for to be used for most fish. And you can label that stuff as my animals have never been fed a GMO ingredient. So GMO-free aquaponic crop, okay? So I would check them out. I would definitely mention that Charlie sent you, that Charlie's talking aquaponics and he wants people to use the best diets. Very well studied, vitamins and minerals for your fish. So to me, it's all about
their website on the chat. If you guys are watching live, in the live chat, I put a link to their website.
Cool. I'm not making anything, you guys. I just know that if that I help them, they help me, and if they help me with diets, I get to help my students. So you guys support those who support us for sure.
Cool. Excellent.
So that's pretty much diet wise. I've got a student who, the trend towards decoupling, and there's some viewers out there that have more experience than me already with decoupling, and I've got stories. We could do whole podcasts on decoupling, but I've got students now who want to take my fish waste off of a settling clarifier and mineralize it for a period of time, maybe 2 weeks, and start using the nutrient solution on top with sea salts. Maybe you've seen these companies that sell the sea salt with all your trace elements, and you can use this in agriculture. So what do you think of that simple project of mineralization and some sea salts for micronutrients for a Dutch bucket system for tomatoes?
I think as long as you had a good microbial inoculant to go with that, I think that could work out really well. Both big
Cool.
proponents of both compost teas and lactobacillus ferments. I've seen some of the lactobacillus ferment formulas work better than anything, any synthetic or organic fertilizer. Is that something that you guys have tried at all? Is the lactobacillus ferments, the labs?
No, I mean, I gotta keep reminding myself. I've been here just over 5 months and been thrown in the pit of teaching and meetings and building a new facility. So not a lot of research. I don't think research is actually a big push in my school right now. I am a community college, but one of the reasons I took the job is it's one of the most unique community colleges I've ever seen. In terms of we're a pillar of sustainability research for the whole state. I think in many ways our facilities outcompete New Mexico State and any other group that's looking at things like algae, biofuels, biogas, solar. Now the greenhouse, so hydroponics is the water saving, aquaponics, the nutrient recycling. The greenhouse technology is the controlled environment year round. So we have just amazing opportunities and businesses partnering with us that are really state of the art. And so once again, I've spent some time around Virgin Islands, Kentucky. At Kentucky State is one of the best fish schools in the nation, with a great online program. If anybody ever wants to get degrees at in an aquaculture field, Kentucky State is great. So Marty, that's Kentucky State University Aquaculture. So you guys should definitely share that with your peeps. There's opportunities for grad school. And I set up replicated research systems at Kentucky State. I think a lot of your viewers may have seen the Kentucky State aquaculture video that I put out. That's about an hour long, explaining UVI system, a little small version I made, but I made 6 replicas. Something like that's a beautiful little model somebody could run in their house, and it's a balanced system. So if you know what goes in, you know what the plants are taking out, it's a system you don't worry about. And as I tell my students, you find that balance and you sleep well at night. And sometimes that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that video, the hour-long video you were talking about, it's one of the ones I send to people who ask me for links, for the last, I don't even know how long. It's one of the, one of my go-to videos, just because it's got, a lot of, a lot of information packed into one video. You don't have to search around to 400 different forums to find out, a really good overview. So, and not being just so high level, it's not like the 3-minute clip that says, oh, the water and the fish and then, okay, we're done, so I felt like it was, it's a good one that, to check out, especially if you're just getting into it. So,
I've been teaching now for a long time. I did a lot of research, actually 20 plus years. I did research and taught intensive workshops, and now I'm a professor and I teach daily. So it's quite a different dynamic, but I really enjoy it. I think that there is a place for the future generation of technicians and people who need this training. And actually, I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you think there will be a field in controlled environment agriculture and hydroponics and organic hydroponics and aquaponics? In your opinion, is there a field for trained employees?
Yeah, because who's going to work these grows?
Yeah, I think that, I think there's going to be one. I can't say there's a demand right now for techs, but I would definitely say that I feel like there's going to be. I think that whether you look at it from, like you were talking about, a less contaminated food source, I think more and more people are going to want that moving forward. And then on top of that, being able to grow medicine and more, recreational. And I think there's a big trend towards, more probiotic growing methods, less you know, synthetic fertilizers, and so, you know, it's a, you know, I think a natural marriage. Obviously, I think all of us do, since we're, you know, we're all, I guess, sort of preaching to the choir at this point. But, you know, I just think that's a really clear indication that, you know, it's going to trend that way. And you know, I guess I sort of look at it like, I remember years and years ago, the first time I saw, like, one of my friends got a TiVo. You guys remember those first DVRs, and you can like rewind live TV. And
Right.
it was really complicated, but it was the first one I'd ever seen. And but like right then I was like, oh, you know, everybody's gonna want one of these. Everybody's gonna want to be able to record their own shows and do all that stuff. And now you have them everywhere, right? I mean, even some hotels you go to now, you know, you can pause and rewind live TV and do that. And so I sort of feel like the same thing is, you know, people are going to start trending that way as our environment gets worse, as our food gets more contaminated, as people push to find out more about what's in their food. You know, that it's just going to, it's a natural progression. So I don't think there's a demand right now, but I think if you're going, you know, if there was something that I felt like there was going to create a demand for in that same way that I was talking about with TiVo and DVR, like, I just feel like that's the same kind of thing that clicks for me. Like, we're going to need it. Like, people are, not only are we going to need it from a standpoint as in we can't avoid it, but I think that just for popularity reasons that people are going to want it. Like, once you, you know, I feel like once you have it for yourself, for instance, whether it's just the end result, whether you're talking about cannabis or a tomato, there's no reason that you would want to go back to the store and buy anything else, just because it tastes that much better. So putting all the other stuff aside about, you know, how effective it is or fun it is or all of those things that I enjoy about it, I think it's very scalable. You can, you know, a lot of people can find what they like in it. Like you said, it's not rocket science, doesn't have to be rocket science, but it can be rocket science. If you want to do things like you're talking about, like, you know, getting a settling tank and separating out the solids and demineralizing them for 2 weeks and infusing them with sea salt, you know, you definitely have a, you know, that kind of scalability of how deep do you want to go? How far down the rabbit hole do you want to travel? And I feel like that's good because almost every idea works in terms of that. You know, like when people bring me stuff, they go, hey, do you think I can use these old gutters? Or, hey, do you think I can use this bamboo? Or, you know, what, I mean, other than like contamination issues, you know, making sure it's food safe, you know, for the most part, you almost, you know, can't do it. Like we had Oregon Grow Budman here talking about just watering off of a natural pond, and being able to do that off of the backwash from his pond filters. And yeah, you know, I definitely think, you know, I said on the chat there, I definitely would consider that to be essentially decoupled aquaponics, where you're just, you know, separating it and feeding it. And,
yeah, I always consider it an art form also, right? It's not rocket science at all. You do have to dial it in like a science somewhat, but it's definitely an art form. You get to feel your system, and you know when it's in balance, when it's not. And you should regularly test your water, test your tissue samples, and just see what's going on, see if there's any toxic levels of anything building up, see where things are deficient. But my mantra, so when I got into it earlier, I said it was fish farming. And my mantra was not to ask my farmers to buy anything. So don't buy silica or don't buy any element whatsoever. And maybe because we're growing food crops which aren't as valuable as a medicinal crop like cannabis or other medicinal crops. So I didn't want to really adjust the chemicals. And I think that was Ricosi's mantra for 30 years, that we're working with fish water. And I wanted to find what plants grow well with fish water. And so what I really enjoyed at UVI and what I stress to my students is every bit of research you find out of UVI came with rainwater from the Caribbean, which was very clean. So there wasn't a high TDS to start with or EC, very pure water. Steve, what we were saying, I stayed consistent with fish feed input over the years. So my inputs were fish feed, rainwater, and then as all the pubs say, we would alternate between calcium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, and then a chelated iron. So your three nutrients that are in all the papers, potassium, calcium, and iron, and using pure rainwater and commercial fish food basically from Purina. So it was nice to see we didn't have an influence of our water quality. They kind of help model other people's systems. So that was one variable we didn't have to think about. And, you know, very little media, cocoa and vermiculite most of my years. And so it was yeah, I think very good research that led, you know, kind of led the way.
And I think that, you know, that might be, you know, one of the things that people who are looking at setting up larger systems may overlook too. And that's, you know, rainwater capture systems. You know, first of all, you know, if you're going to have a large system, having that kind of water on hand for free, you know, I feel like is a huge advantage. And so
It is.
I think we've set aside probably, I know our total capacity is 12,000 gallons. I don't remember how much the systems are, but they're self-contained, buried in ground rainwater capture systems that we have set up to go. And I think that's going to be a huge advantage to be able to use those constantly, and also to help us avoid regulation issues, because Oregon specifically for recreational cannabis is really picky about water rights and what you can use. You can't just use plain old well water rights in order to be able to grow recreational cannabis with. So we can use rainwater, and we can be able to do that, not have to essentially pay to have it delivered. And that's not a huge expense in the Pacific Northwest to have water delivered. But it is one of those things that will eventually pay for itself, and we'll have a constant supply of rainwater. So, you know, do you, I know you guys said you focus on business a lot in terms of your education that you guys do there. So do you guys have like any, you know, like recommended like rainwater capture type equipment, or do you guys cover that at all?
Well, in the Virgin Islands, it was a fairly dry island, and we ended up building about a half an acre rain catchment, just a 3-degree slope on a hillside with a thick tarp, and we roughly, in a very dry area, got about almost 1 million gallons of water a year. So we held this in 90,000 gallon storage tanks. And so that was our water source that fed all of our systems. So anywhere down the field with, I bet there was 45 different fish systems. And so the water was all rainwater for the whole project. Yeah, so you guys understand, I'm sure the listeners do, that that's pure water. So when we look at the aquaponic numbers from UVI, there was no other influence. So there was fish food input and calcium, potassium, and iron supplemented as we managed the system. So my point was, I wasn't looking at trace elements. I have the data. I've got all the data, so we can look at it sometime closer. But there weren't a lot of lacking nutrients, and there weren't any toxic nutrients after, like I would say, 14 years almost I was there. We would get the dilutions with rain because we were outside, so that would dilute the water a little bit. But we never drained the water. If we did drain to clean out a trough or a fish tank, all that water was saved and put right back in the system.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yep. And then so in Canada, you guys saw my research was with indoor grow lights and aquaponic systems. So I'm still actually analyzing data for that. Need to finish up my degree, but it was looking at 4 different light systems indoors for whether it's urban agriculture or whatever. Looking at induction lights, fluorescent lights, LED lights, and metal halide. Metal halide, yeah. So looking at production numbers in a certain quadrant, not just the yields, but also the quality. So sent away for nutrient analysis and to see if different lights would produce healthier food in urban environments if we're talking vertical in a food desert. Then I went up to Canada for 2 years, and I spent time looking at the commercialization of this industry and where are the bottlenecks. So part of it was organic farming certification. The growers wanted certification, and so I kind of helped bridge that gap for temporary anyway. What else? Fish feed was a big one in Canada. To transport fish feed is expensive. So growing regions are very spread out. So to bring fish feed across country was expensive. So looking at co-ops and looking at grain crops that we make and grow for fish feeds. I got involved with a commercial medicinal grower up there, and I started testing a few medicinal crops for her. She is typically a soil grower of medicinals for the market, and she sources wild harvested. She sells mostly organic, and said they were starting to find in organic farming medicinal crops that she was buying from a producer. They would still test them, and they were finding things like arsenic that had been in the soils for 30 years. So you may not be able to spray certain pesticides on an organic farm for 7 years, but some of these compounds are persistent for 30 years plus. So she realized controlled environments is the way to grow her medicinals. And so I started a very small, I did calendula was the first crop. It's used for muscles and joints, often in a cream. A lot of people have had calendula cream. So I started a small trial in a big trough and looking at the number of flowers. So we're picking flowers, and the more flowers you pick, typically deadheading, the more blooms you're going to get. And I'd walk in the greenhouse and get 70 flowers every single day off of this maybe 10-foot by 4-foot section. Come back the next day, get 70 more. And so not only were they there, just like with any other medicinal, if they're healthy and organic, I get just the resin all over my hands. So I didn't test the quality. That's something that may be ongoing now since I left. But so we proved the potential. And so I know that medicinals have their place in aquaponics. Another example I wanted to mention to you, because I know you're doing a medicinal crop course out in California. I had a guy one time came down to the Caribbean and asked me if I could grow watercress in an aquaponic system. And this was early on. So aquaponics was just getting there. The internet was just starting. He came down, he understood we knew what we were doing on the commercial scale. So he said he wanted us to test it. And so we tested it in our small units, had 2 troughs that were 20 by 40. And so I started watercress and got it seeded and got it thriving. And the guy, and I told him, I said, I don't expect it to be the best because we're running 78 to 82 degree water temperatures. I said it's a cold water crop. But he came back 4 weeks or 6 weeks later, and everything was just booming, thriving. And he said, man, I could see the light bulbs going off of his head. And he was from Celestial Seasoning. And he's like, man, now I just need farmers that can grow 1 million pounds of this stuff. And that wasn't my job to go grow 1 million pounds of this, but it just showed me that something like a tea company will buy volumes of your medicinal crops. And so it's just opportunities abound if you can find the right plants and aquaponic systems. So whether it's cannabis, which I honestly have no practical experience with cannabis and aquaponic systems. I teach tomatoes all the time. I'm well versed in how to grow plants. So I only hear testimony from other growers as far as cannabis. But as I tell people, I don't think that it's the most ideal system, the UVI style system that I talk about in Kentucky State system. That deep water culture system is kind of a low nutrient solution. But as a patient, that's how I would grow my plants. I would integrate it in with my kale and my Swiss chard, my lettuce. There's my medicine. I'm not looking for the biggest yields because I'm not selling it, but I think I'll get good quality. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. There's many roads to Rome, and I know you can use any style aquaponic system and grow any kind of plants, really. Like I said before, they're resilient. I've grown everything. I've had very little success with one crop, and that's spinach. I've tried different styles of spinach, and they're often, like I said, cold water crops, and some people have their systems dialed in and have no problem with spinach, but that's one crop I've had problems with. And I've worked with systems that are hard as wasabi, which is a very hard crop. I've worked with cold water fish and integrated with wasabi. That's a 3-year crop that may be worth now $400 a kilo. So there's lots of opportunities, and I actually enjoy inspiring others and teaching, as you know. So I've had over 20 years teaching of aquaponics specific courses, and there's lots to share. I put some posts up. I do manage the UVI aquaponics on Facebook with Don Bailey. So just every once in a while, I'll pull out some pictures that have been almost 30 years sitting on my desktop and explain some of the principles people ask us on our forums now 30 years later. So it's so exciting, and I really do like encouraging the young students to come up with new designs. And Marty, like you said, the decoupled is maybe taking it to the next level, but that's what I encourage my students to do. I say after a couple years hanging out with me, you're going to be right here with me. And then I want you to go on and jump it, do your own businesses, keep teaching people about nutrient recycling and water conservation and feed conversion ratio, why we grow fish and not eat beef, and then pesticide free, organic, pesticide free, or whatever you want to call it. So that's exciting to me right now, and it always has been. So I really enjoy that. But I did spend a year private recently. I did love the farming lifestyle. That was part of our mantra. This is a lifestyle. So it's not the most lucrative way to live if you want to be a farmer and grow food, medicine, or plants and fish. And but it's a lifestyle you can enjoy. You're your own boss. If you can support yourself through markets, then more power to you. So I feel like there's a scalability. We can do aquaponics here in our garages and just kind of support ourselves and our family. We can also support a business. We can support us and not have outside jobs. We could take it to a medium commercial level, service farmers markets, maybe a few grocery stores at wholesale level, but somehow keep your brand. And then I think you jump into this little scalability, where it's very hard. It's very hard to make it at this first jump. And so a lot of people don't make that jump, and they just live this lifestyle here. Owner operated, maybe you've got a couple part-time employees, but you're running maybe an acre worth of farm, food production with fish and plants, just a few people, maybe 2 people. And if you go too big, it gets difficult. But once you get there, I think the future is with that economy of scale. These systems can scale themselves just like hydroponic facilities scale themselves.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
As somebody who has looked at it from the perspective of a business on all of those different scales, whether you're talking about that medium scale or larger scale, and you've looked at, for instance, what you can sell the product for.
Okay.
How much difference do you feel like it makes? Nice, looking good. So here's mine. There you go.
Yeah. Yep. Cheers to you. I got flowers too.
Pretty flowers. Everybody loves pretty flowers. So how do you feel like that it would change if say, in one of these, or if any state that was legal, I guess, that you could swap out a percentage of your crop for something that sold for a lot more, like cannabis? How much easier do you feel like that? Or I'm not going to use the word easier. How much more self-sustaining do you feel like those medium scale to large scale businesses could be?
Well, maybe I'm not understanding the question exactly right. But I think if the cannabis took a lead, right now I teach people don't be careful investing your aquaponic business focused on cannabis, even in a legal state, because of the feds. And I don't know where that's going. And even our a classic example is Tim Mann, Friendly's Aquaponics out in Hawaii.
Yeah, but
Who was he was a former student of mine. He took the UVI course. He took the UVI course and then jump started what he does. But I haven't touched base with Tim in a long time. We've run across paths maybe, but we haven't really communicated too much. But I guarantee right now he would caution anybody against growing aquaponic business commercial level in a state that's legal, because the feds could come in and unplug your pump and shut your system down, but you have imbalance and you have consistent. And when they do that, it throws the whole business off.
Right. And so I definitely understand those concerns, but I guess my question was more theoretical. So let's pretend we lived in a free country where they wouldn't do that to you, and you didn't have the threat of the government coming in to shut you down.
All right. So in that case,
this theoretical world where you could just replace, like, let's say one of your crops all of a sudden became just as lucrative as cannabis is, or the price point of it changed. Like all of a sudden kale is now worth, $600 a pound. How do you feel like that changes your business plan?
Oh, I would just pick what crop. Well, so again, it's a lifestyle. What do I want to be doing for my life? Do I want to be growing a herb or a kale so that's part of it. I don't look at just where the money is. It's where it's what I want to sell. And I've pushed myself on food for a long time. I think health through nutrition. My brother Dennis Peron was all about nutrition as health cures, and cannabis as medicine. Lettuce is medicine, and basil is medicine. And so if we can improve the constituents of our food through, I believe in a bit, we're here about to talk about some trace elements maybe, or save that for another time. But
we're getting pretty late. We might end up just pushing that to next episode.
So that kind of stuff is vital to the ital, right? You have to feed the soul. So what are you feeding yourself? So that was why even in Kentucky State in a master's thesis, I wanted to look at nutrient quality. I'm happy that other students in Kentucky State have taken my 6 replicated system, and they're able to do new research. And Steve, we touched base on that research. So, I'll throw out a few, but I do think we need to look at decoupled systems research. I think food safety research. I think fish diet research. One research topic I'd like to see somebody do is a control of keeping things at 7.0, if you want to say 6.5, but all that takes managing pH. My colleague Nick Savadov in Canada learned the hard way, or accidentally, that he didn't even have to manage his pH. So we had a closed loop, Nick Savadov and his evolution of a UVI system in Canada over like maybe 4 generations. He developed a zero discharge system that kept the waste in, mineralizing in a side loop that would go back in the system. And he asked his technician after a year, how much base are you adding to manage the pH? And the technician just looked clueless, like, I didn't know I was supposed to manage the pH. So the pH over maybe 2 years initially did a pretty dramatic 4.8 decline on a new recirculating kind of aquaponic system with tilapia and crops. And then it kind of stabilized, came back up to about 5.5, 5.8, and it flatlined for 2 to 3 years with no management. So the system was able to stabilize, and a lot of us know in hydroponics, 5.8 is about where we want to keep a nutrient solution for a lot of purposes. And one critical point was, if you can keep an aquaponic system growing intensive fish production at a pH of 5.8, ammonia is not very toxic. It's an ammonium state, and it's it's very docile. I could go up to 100 parts per million. I believe Savidov went to 100 parts per million ammonia, and still the fish and the plants did well. Amazing. And these are in greenhouses next to hydroponic growers using nutrient solutions in somewhat similar systems. So he learned through a zero discharge. He didn't have to manage his pH, and with the side loop of mineralization and feeding those nutrients back in the system, his technician also, when asked, said he never added iron. So Nick created a zero discharge and a zero input system with just city water topping off and feeding fish food. And so that's the closest thing to sustainable that I've seen.
Interesting. What was he doing to account for? Wasn't it UVI research showed that manganese and I forget, there was one other element that got consumed over time. I remember reading.
There was none that were. There were none that were deficient to zero, I would say, over 13 years.
None to zero.
So things, like I said, are resilient. And so Nick was a hydroponic grower as well. So most of his research compares hydroponics to aquaponics. So, and I just sometimes assume everybody reads these things and knows that's information. But Nick Savidov started his first initial trials with the aquaponic system based on the UVI numbers, roughly, and the same inputs, UVI style to hydroponics. And in year one, as expected, hydroponics outcompeted aquaponics. It was about, I think it was 80 kilograms per cubic meter or per square meter for tomato production. So 80 is a good number. The best in the world right now is 110 kilograms per square meter in a greenhouse. So Nick got 80 kilograms with hydroponics, and he got about 60 with aquaponics. So that was what everyone assumed that he would get, and he carried the trial through to year 2 and 3. And so in year 2, he got 85 aquaponics and 80 hydroponics. So aquaponics outproduced in year 2, it outproduced in year 3. And so he was showing that even with a dialed-in hydroponic tomato, regular system that's really productive, he outproduced it using an aquaponic system. In 2 years, then 3 years, and that continued into the 4th year. So what he was trying to show was that the plant growth promoters, growth regulators, the probiotics that are fighting antibiotics or antigens, it's just a natural ecosystem that's being able to be fed more efficiently, and by mineralizing nutrients, throwing them back in the system. So zero discharge, zero inputs. So throw in some organic food, and I think you have the super machine right there.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a question from chat, which was, what are our thoughts on cannabinoid hypermesis?
Yeah. Sorry we took so long to get
guys.
Sorry.
We got sidetracked a couple of times. That was actually our first question that got asked.
Yeah, I feel back as the guy's been waiting. I just wanted to bring it up. So those of you who don't know what that is this weird, probably made up new disease that they're claiming, or syndrome that they're claiming, causes people to vomit uncontrollably.
What?
And yeah, it's.
Huh. Is it related to hydroponics or aquaponics? Or cannabis?
Supposedly it's related to too much cannabinoid uptake. So
can I give a story anonymous?
Sure.
So I have a friend who has recently worked in the industry in Colorado, around Denver, in the cannabis industry. There's big warehouses that are growing crops intensively. They do things in certain styles, and I think many of them are not sustainable. We're burning huge amounts of energy for lighting. We're not recycling nutrients. Even the plastics, all that shit comes in now. Even the legal go to the store, man. So much plastic you guys are disposing. So I think if we, as we move into industrial production, you know, please support those businesses that are showing sustainability and concern for the future and the environment. You can choose what you buy if you are buying, and choose with your dollars, buy from the right company. So a friend of mine worked in a company who I believe, as most of the industry, in my opinion, from what I keep seeing, is that our peaceful plant's been taken over by corporate greed and capitalism, and really the concern for humanity is not in many of the businesses that I see. I work with some companies that are concerned about medicine, and they're concerned about the quality of medicine, but many companies aren't. So employee that I knew that was up the ladder somewhat, was in charge of big bays in a facility, started looking at his reservoir tank and noticing a slime using mostly his synthetics, but having a few inputs, organic based inputs. And so a biofilm developed in the reservoir tanks, and he took samples and sent it away, and they found examples of one of the flesh-eating type bacteria. Bacteria that transfers to humans is not nice. And so the long story is I mostly want to caution growers to make sure you are sanitary. Make sure you're clean between crops and you know what you're doing, because that's a very bad thing. And if you have employees, even worse. So take care of your people. Otherwise, it was whistleblowing. You know, they told him, he brought the information to the bosses, and they basically told him to not tell anybody else. And so on the sly, he had to tell the people under him to be careful and watch what they're doing. No open wounds. You got open wounds, don't stick your hands in your tanks. Just a put out, because I teach students also who think that the industry is all the glitters is gold. It's oversaturated probably already, and it's becoming taken over by certain groups. So if you do get in the industry, please be one of the shining stars and set good examples. And all that was maybe a tribute to Dennis Peron. So thanks for bringing that up, Steve.
Well, we were talking earlier just about just how now that Jeff Sessions is in power now, since he got elected, what's going to happen to the industry as a whole. You know, we don't really know entirely what's going to happen. It looks like they're going to leave medical alone, but we don't know yet.
Right. And as you can imagine, at the university level, we've talked a little bit, but unless things change federally, a lot of governments, institutions that are ones that rely on government funding cannot participate in the program. So it's a shame that certain partnerships can't happen, because this is opportunity for the future. Things are changing, but I'm stuck in a situation where it's hard to even discuss this openly, much less fund it or advertise it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you guys, Marty, you're in Oregon right now?
That's right. Yep.
All right. So in Southern Oregon is one of our former UVI students. Are you in Southern, or are you up in
I am
city?
in Southern right now, and in the next probably 2 months, I'm going to be moving up north, up closer to Portland. But
Cool. So,
I've been here in the Medford area for about 12 years now, I think.
So you must know the farming fish. You ever heard of them?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so check out the farming fish, Rogue River, Oregon.
Yep.
They don't have a huge web presence. They've been around for a long time, though. They're students, and they run organic, certified organic aquaponics. That system's been running, I would bet, 6-7 years now. They're probably the biggest and the most under the radar chill group that I know that's being consistent. They do certified organic aquaponics, certified organic soil. They understand the microbiology.
Yeah, I ran into them a couple of years ago at the farmers market here locally.
Okay.
Some of them had, I don't know if they were products from there or not. I don't remember. Anyway, I ran into them, and or somebody that worked there, and that's how I found out about them, was through a local farmers market. So definitely cool stuff. And then also There's one in Ashland too. I forget the name of it now. I'll have to look it up. But I've been out there also and checked them out. It's pretty cool. They have a setup where they work with local restaurants there in Ashland to be able to supply them with greens and fish. So very local, little self-sustained farm, very similar to what they have there in Rogue River, where they sell a lot of their stuff locally, and like you said, sort of stay under the radar in terms of like big marketing stuff. So
yeah, they've got some opportunities. They're starting to work with the city with landfill gas, so they're going to start tapping into a big landfill and maybe doing quite a few acres under glass or a greenhouse and doing an aquaponic system. So keep an eye on them. And so I got to hail up Mike and Olivia. They run the farming fish for a long time, and they had a recent baby. So here's to new life.
Very cool. We're expecting our third in May, so definitely
new life.
Thumbs up to that.
Yeah.
Making the babies.
Yep. You're going to have a baby girl, right?
Yep, that's right.
See, I got you, man. They say it takes a real man to make a baby girl.
I've got 2 out of 3 are girls, so there you go.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, so I think the future's bright, and we got great people. Ken Armstrong is part of the Aquaponic Association. Adam Cohen, my colleague. So if there's any viewers left tonight, I would say, get involved with the Aquaponic Association. Even as membership, it helps that organization. Then you'll start to meet some really great people, and our conferences are blowouts, so it's not a bad time, not a bad club to get into. It's still a small club, Aquaponics. I hear big businesses, and I'm involved somewhat with big businesses, so I think we're moving forward, and it definitely, I think, became a lot bigger than Jim Ricosi ever thought it would when he started in the University of Virgin Islands, and so I think we all thought the same thing. We were surprised it got this big.
Very cool.
I do remind my students a lot that when I got into aquaponics, I caution them to be careful on the internet. There's good and bad, and you'll hear opinions every way. And when I got into aquaponics, there was no internet. So I think those old days had something to say for the maybe our ingenuity and how we do things. But I find a lot of people now spend too much time sitting on the internet looking on how to do things, and they're somewhat afraid to pick up a skill saw or some PVC cement if you have to, and plug in that pump. I think so. If anybody again is watching, get over that hump of just doing it and stop reading it. You've read everything there is to know. So plug in the pump and pick up the saw. Start tomorrow. Drop $400. Just go buy some supplies, put it together, and you can grow. You can grow cannabis. You can grow medicinal herbs. You can grow food crops with your fish. You don't even have to harvest your fish.
I think
some
that's
nice koi. Yep.
I think it's an important point too, that, like a lot of times we get caught up in these conversations about, how much can we produce per square foot and light that you need, and so much detail that's like, you have to understand, that just starting out has a huge value in it. And you got to take the good with the bad. I think balance is good, where, I can imagine it, on one hand, it would have been nice to have access to the amount of good information that you get on with the internet, but having to, also take the bad that comes with it and sort it out is important. So I feel like you got to have balance of actually doing stuff. And one of the things I've always wanted to show on my channel was, just the very basic stuff, that I started with. Like I didn't take down the first grow that I ever put up a few years ago that was just, basically a fish tank with a pump that ran every hour or so. It wasn't like, just static drains that went back to the tank, and that was basically it. And
that's how I got started too.
Yeah, it's not going to break any yield records, but it was great quality. It's only for myself. It wasn't like, the entire thing cost me, including setup, and the entire first run cost me maybe $100. So it wasn't like, I already had storage containers, and I used an old tank that I already had, so there really wasn't a ton of cost to it. And when you're doing it for yourself, just to make your own food or medicine, there's really not a lot of production that you really need to have.
Right.
You're really just learning. Like, that's where your production is coming in, is getting your hands-on education on how to grow stuff. And so now we grow in relatively small systems. I don't have any like large systems, but I grow enough medicine to be able to supply myself for the entire year and more, just in an outdoor run. I do the indoor run almost just to keep me sane in the wintertime, so I have stuff to grow, and then also to have fresh greens, probably more than anything. Like, I really value having that kind of food to eat in the wintertime, that I don't have to buy. So
Marty, do you grow cannabis, and would you drop lettuce and kale down below in the same system?
Oh yeah, I try to do
awesome.
lettuce. I do kale, a lot of kale specifically because it's it absorbs a lot of the calcium that I have in my well water. So it does really well and is relatively easy to grow and doesn't compete for the same nutrients other than calcium for the most part. And so I grow a lot of kale. I really like to do microgreens like buckwheat, for instance. I overpopulate my beds with worms. So I have a separate worm bin, and then we go through and pick a bunch of them out. And, about every, I would say about once a month or so, we add worms to at least one of the grow beds, and they're going through and adding them in. And so the worm bin just gets our food and vegetable compost. It doesn't get any doesn't get any manure at all or anything like that. So I mix my own teas with that and supplement with that. But I like to be able to do the buckwheat because it doesn't regenerate like some of the other microgreens do. So all of those roots, I let them get about this long, and then all of those roots are essentially get consumed by the worms and allow them to continue to thrive. So I do that a lot in like right when I'm starting flower. So when the plant's transitioning from one to the other. So I do like to do a lot of different microgreens, and just because we like to eat them, and they help consume any extra nitrogen in the system. So I try to companion plant as much as I can, but still plant stuff that I'm going to eat. Like, I don't, I do grow things like sage and peppermint and different things like that we'll use for like pest management and different stuff like that. So I try to grow stuff that I'm going to use. I don't like a lot of cover cropping that you see traditionally with soil growers. They're just, it's, there's no real, it's like clover or some thing that I don't, doesn't really have a use. And I like to grow stuff I'm going to eat. So we produce a ton of microgreens. I like pea shoots, for instance. We grow a lot of peas, do really well. But we've grown everything from like eggplant to cucumbers to pink lemonade blueberries. So,
and all in the same nutrient solution, right?
Yep. So it's not like production-wise, individually, I don't think any of the plants are like, other than the cannabis that we put in the dual root zone, they get, we can water their, the tea in the dual root zone a little more directed, but for the most part, they still get all the same solution. But the dual root zone does have the advantage of whatever's in the dual root zone layer and access to that. So I definitely feel like it's more concentrated, I guess, in the dual root zone. And Steve's talked about before, it gives it another layer to establish different types of microbacteria. So that's probably the only main difference between those and any of the other plants. So for the most part, it's all one system. I don't separate them out.
So Steve, since we have Professor Dredd in the house, I've got a student who asked me a question today. I wasn't sure. So if you take a soil layer and you have a root mass come through, within this root mass, is there a certain zone that would pick up a certain element, say phosphorus or nitrogen, or so maybe say more of your macro and micro elements? Does that happen in a certain root zone? So like if he could precision dose a certain area with nutrients, do you think that occurs in roots?
We tried a bunch of different experimenting back when I worked with the aquaponic source. They have 3 different lab systems there, and we did a bunch of testing with dosing iron, having a control, and then doing that had a dual root zone tomatoes, and then we did different dosing with different nutrients both in the soil layer, and then the other one where we dosed the opposite, where we dosed the opposite verse into the water instead. Iron, calcium, magnesium. And to a lesser extent, potassium tended to be much more picked up via the water. In the soil layer was mostly phosphorus and micronutrients tended to be at a much higher uptake level in the soil zone. And it also was when we tested some tissue samples of the leaves with basil and tomatoes was the other way we got that result. Again, in the same exact system. And they were also planted out in little dual root zone pots.
Okay.
But it needs to be tested further. It's one of those things where I have enough data from 4 or 5 runs with different nutrients to where I'm pretty happy with it. I get really good results.
Okay.
And I feel comfortable with what I prefer to dose where. Actually, I have a whole chart on that that I give out in the class that I teach as far as what nutrients, supplements we've tested and where I've tested them, in the soil versus in the water, based on, how easily you can kill the fish. Obviously, anything with high in zinc, you're obviously going to do an, even remotely risk putting in the system you put in the soil layer, just as one example, because it's kills fish much quicker, just as one example. But yeah, that's what I found was generally was the magnesium, the calcium, and the iron, and to a lesser extent potassium, but it tended to be, it reacts real quick with certain salts when you dump it in the water, but it'll deplete much quicker. Whereas when you put it in the soil, you can get by with a lower dose per run.
Okay.
Way to put it.
Yeah.
Tends to be made available a little bit more in the soil layer longer term.
Cool. Yeah, I think we got to focus on producing nutrient-dense food. So I know that'll lead into your trace element talk maybe next time, but I think that yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I'd recommend to them too is, look at some of the new products coming out like Mammoth P, or
Right.
I know there's another product it just came out called there's something else. It's a similar nutrient, but it's supposed to be for some of the micronutrients. I can't remember the name of the product. I just learned about it the last day or two.
So again, I would rather find a fish food that can feed my plants and not buy anybody else's product off the shelf. That's I want to. That's what I want to go in this industry. Where I want to go is, why should I buy Mammoth P or NPK or a PK 1314? Or I want to just be able to feed some fish and get those nutrients that I need.
I think Mammoth P is a little different because it's a culture of a microbe as opposed to a nutrient solution.
Yeah, okay, and it breaks down. Yep.
Yeah,
so these are microbial inoculants that you would add to your mineralization tank or add to your
so aren't these
further mineralize these nutrients?
Aren't these ubiquitous, and aren't they going to inoculate my system naturally? And if not, can't I just get a little gallon of water from your system and just inoculate my system and not have to buy Mammoth P?
Oh yeah, I mean it just depends on what size system you're doing, and I honestly don't know how long they will stay, levels. I mean, what I normally do is I put a little bit in and I brew it up, and I don't, basically make more with my tea when I use it.
Mammoth P in particular, a lot of those are named, around or based on what they're primarily, appear in the natural world to feed off of, like lactobacillus, is, for milk is basically you find it on fermented milk. That's what it, essentially appears to eat. And then so Mammoth P is a similar thing, but it, for the most part, is for alfalfa is actually what it primarily consumes. And if you look at Mammoth P, the ingredient solution it sends it out in, it includes alfalfa extract in it so that it has a shelf life that they'll be able to, continue to eat it as it grows. So as long as you have somewhere in your system have its food source, then it will continue to be persistent. But I would imagine at some point it would start to fade if you don't have its food source in the system to be able to do it. Now, so I have an experiment that I'm working on where I'm basically going to try to keep a continuous culture of it, where using alfalfa extract or alfalfa meal, for instance, in a particular worm bin, and trying to keep it persistent. So in addition to changing what I feed my fish, I'm also trying to change what I feed my worms. So in my worm bin, I'm adding a lot of the supplements that we would add in different stuff, like whether it's, the alfalfa in Mammoth P, or where I'm adding in like kelp meal, for instance, is another one that I'll feed to the worms. EM1 Bokashi bran, which is basically just a rice powder with like the super C Sierra powder added into it, like an inoculant. So those are the types of things, and so I think it follows a similar line of you wanting to feed the fish something different to be able to get your result. You want to feed the worms something different to get a different result, and introducing different microbes that feed on different things also can make the nutrient better available in the system. I've used Mammoth P personally and feel like it's definitely made a difference in the medicine that I've grown for myself.
I guess for my farmers, how do we make our own Mammoth P?
Well, I think that
soaking it.
Grab some alfalfa and a microscope and get to work. But I would imagine that there's, what's that, Steve?
Especially, that's the application that we're using it for as an inoculant for mineralization tanks or teas and things like that. It's for a large system.
You're really breaking up. I can't.
I hear the same thing, Marty. All right.
Anyway, I think he's talking. You're really breaking up, so I'm not sure, but I think he's talking about using those different products in like mineralization tanks and different things like that to be able to use them as an inoculant. And then, but I'm all for creating your own. And
that's what I'm saying. I mean, I have been a activist for the farmer, and I love to say that when I walk in a hydroponic store for the last 20 years, I look to those nutrients, which continues to grow and grow, those set nutrient sections.
Yeah.
And there's so many companies now selling so many products. I'd love to say that I walk in those stores and I don't even look at that section. I walk right by every one of those elements, every one of those boosters. But I'm not saying that they're for my aquaponic growers out there that some of these nutrients may not help you produce a little more or even a little better, but it's a trade-off. Do I want to go buy that $30 bottle of whatever it is and get in a habit of another input into my system?
For sure. And I think it's only a boost. It's only going to get you to where you want to go faster. A lot of those microbes that are going to take longer to develop in the system, you might get a big value of boosting a new system with an inoculant. I definitely see a lot of value in that, and introducing microbes that wouldn't normally establish without the food source that that would come into it. So I'm a big believer in like labs, for instance, in using lactobacillus, which is a very versatile microbe, which I find it to be pretty much persistent in my system now, and it would be hard for it not to be, because I'm constantly adding it with my worm bin. So I don't surprise that I'm continue to see it in an aquaponic system, but I do feel like since it can be both anaerobic or or not, then it can really help you control those areas if you have any in your grow beds or mineralization tanks or any of those things, to break down any small area that becomes anaerobic, because it is so successful in anaerobic zones that it will seek those out naturally and overtake them, outcompete anything that's bad until the food source is gone. So I definitely feel like those are great applications for sort of maintaining that healthy ecosystem you want.
Yeah, and if I had a friend like you around, I would just go get some water from you.
Yeah, and that would 100% work.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd listen, just always encourage people to, keep striving to be as sustainable as possible. So, figure out how to close the loop tighter. I think that's where we're at. We're almost sustainable. I will never be sustainable. What is sustainable? Who knows? But we can kind of come close to a definition, which means we can kind of come close to sustainable, but we can't quite be there. There's very few things in life that are sustainable, and that's why we're in the condition we're in. And so I just think that we can come closer and closer. So whether it's water use, nutrient use, energy use, those are three pillars that we can kind of dial in for sustainability. And so I want to close that loop. I want to reuse what we have and grow more food while we can, but always look towards how are we going to grow it in the future. So a lot of my program, actually my students can apply for space research. Controlled environment agriculture is, I believe, the future of humanity in some sense. It's part of the equation. And it's good to see that we overlap now with cannabis. I can openly talk about the subject in my classes. I just can't teach it. So it's good to see that people realize that medicine through nutrition is how to heal ourselves, and both medicine through cannabis, nutrition through cannabis. In many ways, it all overlaps. So I may call it the healing of the nation. I think there may be other plants that may be that prophesized plant that would come and heal the nations together. But there's a good chance it's cannabis. And with that, I think that's part of Dennis Peron's push. I think pioneers like Dennis Peron do feel that cannabis was the healing of the nation, was a prophesized plant that helps us in so many ways. And the powers that be don't want to see that popular at this time, because pharmaceutical industry will lose money. I think that's the root of it all currently. And but I think for many ways we need to adopt this technology, and it's just an interesting bridge between a life of aquaponics and how close that brought me to cannabis over the last 20 years, my connection with aquaponics. So I think there was a calling. I think there was a reason. I think that my friends, my colleagues, we will all continue to push and to realize the plant is it's part of the equation, is part of humanity moving forward. And so I think it's nice to see that we're more open about talking about it, and that I really do feel for Dennis Peron right now. And it really touches me to see these pioneers as they come through. Jack Herrera was one who died not long ago. That was one of the first persons and the biggest person to be an activist for what we do. And so these people like Dennis Peron have really paved the way and made this issue as pushed to the forefront as I've ever seen it. And so I'm very touched, and I'm honored to be here tonight. So thanks again.
No, thank you for that. All you've shared with us. You've been enormously informative, great guest tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure, you guys. Thanks for hanging out. And if this is on a podcast later, I'll be sure to show my wife and my daughter, who popped in early and photobombed us. that they're on. Yeah.
It's all recorded and will be on YouTube after we're done. What else was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Is there anything you'd like to plug here at the end, or mention, or anything else?
Yeah. Myself, I'm UVI Aquaponics on Facebook. That's a great group. There's a lot of us are very educated. There's a lot of Facebook groups and forum groups that still deal with small scale aquaponics, and this is more commercial oriented. So UVI Aquaponics. We are also Santa Fe Community College. So I think on Facebook it's Greenhouse Management, Hydroponics, and Aquaponics at SFCC, Santa Fe Community College. Find us there. I'm personally Aquaponics at Hotmail. So I consult and I work with people around the world. I love to educate. I love to consult to build, to consult to production. So aquaponics at hotmail.com. You can always reach me. I work with a lot of people in the industry. I've had a deep connection here with Steve for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years now. So we've overlapped in many projects, and we see things the same way. So obviously, that's why I'm on the show tonight, supporting Steve, and I really appreciate you guys putting this information out. I put the word out to my students every semester now that you guys are here, and if they want the education, just tune in and listen. What else? I work for a group in Canada. So I work for a group called Alternative Farming Systems, and we are looking to recently team up with a gasification unit to burn landfill from a municipality in Medicine Hat, Canada, and that should feed the energy source for I guess it's about a 3/4 acre greenhouse and about a 4-acre greenhouse expansion available. So I've got Canadian projects right now, US projects, Middle East projects, and hopefully soon going to Asia to do some teaching. And hope to link up with Steve and Ken at Ouroboros sometime. But I'm pretty open source, so you guys contact me, let me know what you need, and I can point you in the right direction, or I see if I can help you too. Our college is one of the best right now as far as training aquaponics students. We have one of the few accredited 3-credit college courses, actually 4-credit college course in aquaponics. We have an intro aquaponics, advanced aquaponics. My interns are looking to work in California, in Israel, in Egypt, around Santa Fe. So it's a great program. So if you need some kind of training in aquaponics and you want to spend some time as a student, come to Santa Fe Community College. Look us up on Facebook, as I mentioned. Look us up at sfcc.edu, and you'll find our programming. Otherwise, I can just pump up my SFCC club. They're the best. We SFCC hydroponics, greenhouse management, aquaponics, making aquaponics great again. So that's where we're at now. And like I said, I enjoy where I'm at now. So please get in touch. I'll help you out. And thanks. I got to big up St. Croix we talked about earlier. So we were a little dangles here. There's my St. Croix Island. Always give respect to the shoulders I stand on. So Jim Ricosi, Don Bailey, Nick Savadov. These are some of the pioneers that I've worked with. I've been blessed. I do believe it's important who you work for. I talked earlier tonight about a friend in the cannabis industry that works for a bunch of greedy bastards. And so he quit. And I respect him for that. So you're valuable, and make sure you're worthy. So whoever you work for, make sure you're doing the right thing. I've talked sustainability tonight. So think about what you do, why you do it, what you're here for. And I think most of us are on the same page. We're preaching to the choir, like someone said tonight. And just bless. Yeah, my cat's over there tonight. I just noticed all night long, my cat's been sitting in the background. That's my one-eyed Gilligan, born in the Caribbean. Traveled from the Caribbean to Kentucky to Canada to Texas, now to New Mexico, just like me. Cool. Look forward to seeing you guys around and teaching you along the way.
Hey, Charlie, are you Charlie Shultz on Facebook?
You got it. I don't friend people who don't know me. Marty, we're cool. Steve, we're cool. So
Yep.
if you want to send me a message, you can. You can always find me through UVI Aquaponics. You'll find Steve there. You'll find me there. We all bop around that place. So I don't tend to float around many aquaponic sites on Facebook, but UVI Aquaponics is one I run. You'll find me. And cool. Let's link up.
Yeah, I just posted in your UVI Aquaponics group some of my aquaponic cannabis photos. So
yeah, I think we were. It's been a pleasure. I would say starting 5 years ago, I'd go to conferences, and I started the little slideshow in my presentation that talks about niche marketing and being at the crest of the wave. So it's a medicinal, right? With aloe. If you were on the crest of the wave with aloe, you made money. But if you fell behind and you were 5 years too late on aloe, you didn't make money. So anything, I say crest of the wave. And so 5 years ago or so, I started putting up the throbbing cannabis leaf in my presentations to scientists at universities around the country. I felt the freedom, like Steve said earlier, man, we're all over the place anyway, just do it. Just be blatant. So I feel like we're able to talk that now. I find in my circles in universities, it's wide open. We discuss it behind the scenes. A lot of us can't do anything because it's not federal yet. But I have basically had orders saying get those folders ready because the day it is legal, we can move in that direction. So I think a lot of schools are sitting there, and if we can all lobby Congress, of course, the only way to do things is to speak up. So keep active. If you want this to happen, being quiet won't happen. If you really want it to happen legal on a federal so we can move into research and education, then be vocal. Call your congressman and do what you need to do to make that point known. And that's where I'm at these days with that issue.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. You guys both live in legal states. So I guess, do you find that you can work with universities there on the subject?
No, because they're still federally funded.
Okay.
I mean, I can't really say because I haven't tried. So
Yeah.
The only university
I would assume not.
University I work with, University of Technology of Kingston.
Wow.
So the only one that is legally allowed to grow. There's 4 universities that are allowed to grow in Jamaica. University of West Indies, University of Technology of Jamaica, and I can't remember the other 4 at this point.
Yeah, Steve, there's obviously probably your listeners know that the facility in Canada. So you and I have both worked somewhat with that facility. So
Yep.
Yeah, there are movements in this direction, and that's a promising one. You know more than I do currently, but it's nice to see that aquaponics is making some headway. And sometimes when I think and I mention growing with fishes, I say, oh, it's the website or the podcast where you learn about growing pot and in an aquaponic system. So it's nice to see that things are moving forward in that way.
We'll have a bunch more of those businesses here, both Marty and I, that we're involved with. Hopefully before the end of the year, we have a bunch of stuff in the works that we can't really talk about yet, or very briefly.
That's good. That's good, man.
St. Croix, there you go.
All right.
And podcasts and stuff.
You're breaking up. What was that, Steve?
Marty, do you want to mention your podcasts and stuff?
Oh yeah, so you can check out my channel. It's AP Meds. We talked about a little bit kind of the idea of what my systems are, but basically, they're just small home grow systems that I grow food and medicine in both to feed my family and have medicine for myself. And so definitely check those out. I'm also working on setting up a recreational farm and things continue to move forward on that. So we'll be having videos as we start to set up and build out that. And so, you know, look for that. We've talked about it on the podcast before, where essentially we're planning on, you know, having aquaponic systems and keeping up, you know, all of our clones and veg plants and aquaponic systems, and then having decoupled systems for flower, somewhat for, well, I guess for a few different reasons, partially because you can't come in and unplug it and mess everything up. So that's definitely a big advantage to it. And then also being able to scale it out without having to build a system and be relatively transportable. So that's kind of where I'm at with my stuff. None of that's probably going to start still. We don't even get access to the property for another like 3 to 4 weeks. So that's going to be a little while out. But other than that, I'll make little videos around here, and definitely check out you know, the older podcast episodes. There's a lot of information in there. And we have the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Facebook group. And try to post in the many Facebook groups as possible. I posted in UVI a few different times. I just posted some of my favorite pictures in there again for you guys for you to be able to reference some examples of aquaponics. Both, I guess I have straight aquaponics, I have dual root zone aquaponics, and I have decoupled aquaponics. So you really have, you know, sort of a wide variety of different things that I've messed with, you know, timer systems and all that stuff. For the most part is on my YouTube channel. You can look at how I did it and how I set it up, and video updates, you know, picture slideshows, lots of different ways to be able to, you know, just sort of see the system over time, which I feel like is important when you're trying to learn. You know, like you talked about, some people choose to watch videos or do stuff over and over again, and sometimes it can be tough to, you know, shoot a video that explains a concept that you really need to see happen over time. So develop content is great for stuff to have where you see the same thing at different points in time. And so Charlie, I really have to thank you for all of your videos that you've posted from various places and stuff. That I learned a lot from going through and having access to that when I didn't have a system of my own yet. And so it was definitely nice to be able to have good, reliable content that I could at least find on the internet, and then before I ventured out onto my own. So I definitely felt like there are a few people that that put out good content that really helped a lot of people like myself to sort of start from the next platform up above. And so thank you for that and for being on the show.
Cool. Yeah, likewise. Thanks for you guys sharing too.
Yeah, thank you. And for everyone else, you guys can check me out. Email me at Ponics. My website's Ponics. Please subscribe if you enjoy this. I'll be doing a lot more how-to videos here soon, and nutrient videos and IPM videos on individual nutrients, mostly in regards to regular aquaponic plants. But yeah, you guys will like it, I think, hopefully. Also, check out Ouroboros, ouroborosfarms.com, I believe it is. I'll be teaching a medicinal herb class here at the end of February, and a cannabis class again at the end of March. So definitely check that out. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you guys all next time. Thanks again, Charlie. I'd love to have you back on the show again, and
for sure.
Again in the future.
We say VI in the Virgin Islands, so the V and the I.
And everyone say a little prayer for Dennis Peron. So
for sure.
Thanks a lot, and
thanks, Marty.
Nice to meet you. It was great.
All right, peeps.